Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to have a discussion regarding the Division Heartland on a particular angle that I think has been kind of ignored, or at least overshadowed by the other aspects of the game. Some of those aspects being things like what kind of game is it going to be under the free-to-play umbrella? A more PvE-focused game or PvP? What kind of mechanics are they going to incorporate from either the Division 1 or 2? Will it even be a third-person game like Div 1 or 2? I think questions like those and questions in that realm have kind of dominated the discussion ever since the game was announced back in May, but I think another very important and intriguing aspect to wonder about is, what will the game itself have to offer that might set it apart from other new games in the industry? And I don't necessarily mean new gameplay or game features, but can we expect any engine optimizations and improvements? Will we see any technical improvements to the experience beyond the already incredibly performing Division 1 and 2? Will this game even run on Snowdrop? That's the kind of stuff I want to delve into today. So quickly, before we get to it, I want to remind everyone that we currently have a giveaway going on in celebration of reaching 10,000 subscribers on the channel, and among other entry options, all you have to do to enter is subscribe here on the channel. But if you want full details and info on the other ways to enter in, check out the video I'm linking in the top corner of the screen right now. But without further ado, let's get into this Heartland discussion. To clear things up right away, some of you are probably aware that I have more info about Heartland than the majority of Division players. I may have been fortunate enough to partake in some early testing during this year. I can't confirm or deny anything. However, the entire basis of this video I'm structuring from the perspective of someone who knows nothing about the game, other than the official name and reveal image, which is all that's been publicly released. So, which is exactly where the majority of the community is at. I'm going to be using other public info to infer and extrapolate certain points, all that kind of stuff. So just thought I'd clarify that before we get into far. But to circle back, the engine. I am fully confident that Heartland will run on Snowdrop, and let me tell you why. Regardless of if the game were to be third or first person, we now have examples of Division-themed games that both run on Snowdrop. In the third-person category, we obviously have the Division 1 and 2, and then in the first-person category, we have X-Defiant, which, yes, if you've forgotten or had never realized, they announced that this game is running on the Snowdrop engine, which makes sense, and it's fitting, given all of the game's assets and maps are straight from the Division worlds. Obviously, there had to be modifications and tunings to fit the first-person perspective, but the game runs on the same engine as Division 1 and 2 because it's borrowing that same game essence, you could say. So again, regardless of what Heartland ends up being, though I think one of those makes more sense than the other, it'll run on Snowdrop, I have no doubt. It just wouldn't make sense for Red Storm not to use the engine that Division 1 and 2 ran on, especially considering they worked on both of those games and have experience with the engine, which raises a bunch of other questions. Primarily, what can we expect to see the game bring to the table? And by that I mean, Division 1 launched in 2016, which might have been Snowdrop's first game, I'm not entirely sure, but we're all well aware, I'm sure, of what that game brought to the table graphically and technically. And then 3 years later, we got the Division 2, which again was on Snowdrop, but a newer version 3 years later. And two of the big improvements and enhancements to the technical capabilities of that engine that I'm aware of, I'm sure there are others, but these are the two big ones noticeable to players, were A, the new lighting capabilities, more brilliant God rays, different usages of lighting and reflections and shadow and all that type of stuff. And then B, the game and engine can now use curved terrain, whereas if you remember in the Division 1, every surface you walk on is flat. It might be at an angle, like 45 or 30 or 15, but every walkable surface was flat. Whereas in Division 2, you see curved terrain everywhere. In the craters around DC, in the vegetated areas of Roosevelt Island, in the Washington Mall, everywhere. So again, I'm sure there were more, but those are the two big noticeable improvements made to Snowdrop in that 3-year period between the Division 1 and 2. And by the time Heartland releases, which as I've said numerous times I'm predicting will be March of 2022, but even if it is 1, 2, 3 months sooner, it's practically the same 3-year window from when Division 2 released in March of 2019. And so the question I want to pose to all of you is, what graphical or technical improvements on an engine level do you anticipate we might see in the Division Heartland? We know Massive has continued to make improvements to the engine in recent years. My buddy DA made a video about how Avatar's continual development, made them improve Snowdrop enough to be on a comparable level to Unreal Engine 5, which is now just in early access. Now, sure, Heartland is of course being built on a 1.5 to 2-year-old version, but similarly Division 2 is built on a 4.5 to 5-year-old version from current day. The release date of the game doesn't represent the current engine version because they started work on it obviously several years before release. So even though it's lagging behind a few years, Heartland is still going to be built on a 3-year newer version of the engine than Division 2 was. And so I personally am very interested in seeing what, if any, noticeable or significant improvements or additions may have been made to that experience. In the recent video I did, which a lot of you enjoyed, I'm so glad you did, about the Sharkmob studio and their in-development Project 2, which has the potential to be a direct Division competitor given as it's being made by some of Division 1's core developers. I'll link that video above right now too if you want to check that out. But after watching that, a lot of people began saying stuff like, I can't wait to see what Sharkmont might be able to do with this game and what new features to the industry they might be able to bring. And while I certainly don't want to discredit anyone's excitement, there's a lot to be curious and eager for with that game. Let's not forget that The Division Heartland is A, coming much sooner than Project 2 will, and B, is within the Division universe, which, like, it's not hard to deny how technically and graphically beautiful and powerful and just awesome Division 1 and 2 are. And so while The Division Heartland is going to be a smaller game in scope, that's pretty easily inferable by it being free to play and being made in a shorter window than Division 1 or 2. And the fact that it's being made by Red Storm instead of Massive, I don't think those factors mean we should discount the potential of the Snowdrop engine, and we shouldn't discount Red Storm's potential. They've been with the Division, like I said earlier, ever since prior to Division 1's launch. So personally, I am very excited to see what they might be able to bring to the table in a solo project. And more largely, as I've laid out here, I'm curious what you all think we might be able to expect in terms of graphical or technical improvements to the game, given it's being built on a roughly, 3-year newer version of Snowdrop than Division 2 is. And then before I close this thing out, I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit and acknowledge something that some people might bring up, which is that some of these improvements to the Division 2 and the engine are what led to the gameplay restrictions of things like 12-player DZs. There's always been some question of if they'd actually be able to just hypothetically raise the limit to 16 people. Different developers have kind of given different answers over time, but overall, it's been well documented and explained how things like the lighting improvements to Snowdrop and the increased character customization options over the Division 1 led to the player count restrictions in the DZ, primarily due to the conflicts of those new technical features with the aging hardware of the Xbox One and the PS4. Now, we don't technically have confirmation of the platforms the Division Heartland will be available on one way or the other, but given you can sign up on their website to test on the Xbox One or PS4, I'd say there's a very strong possibility it will be available there at launch, just like Division 2 was. And so it's fair to be concerned or wonder if further engine optimizations and improvements could hinder gameplay further. The one counterpoint I would make, or the one explanation I can think of for why this might not end up being the case, is that, like I said, it's pretty obvious that Heartland is going to be a smaller game in scope than either the Division 1 or 2, simply due to its free-to-play nature and its shorter development window. So perhaps they could potentially end up equating to those things could end up equating to less stress for your gaming hardware to render in real time. Less things compared to Division 2's expansive open world. Obviously, I'm reaching here. That level of technicality in game development is far beyond my understanding. And while I said I would leave any further knowledge I may have of this discussion at the door, I'll just say I'm not worried about further optimizations or improvements compromising Heartland's gameplay offerings. But regardless, I just wanted to address that point so that no one thinks I'm trying to ignore or hide anything. Ultimately, I found this discussion point to be a super interesting one to contemplate, and I'm going to be very interested to hear what you all have to say about it. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on to be updated every time I upload. As I said, let me know your thoughts about everything down below. What, if any, improvements or engine features do you anticipate we might see in the Division Heartland, given it's going to be running on a 3-year newer version of Snowdrop? Do you think the game will still release on last-gen consoles? And what are your other general predictions and speculations about the game? Leave all of that down below. I'll be very curious to read and maybe be able to comment, maybe not, on your thoughts. But yeah, guys, I can't wait to see more from the Division Heartland. The community deserves a public reveal after waiting for so long, and hopefully there's not much longer to wait. That's going to do it for me, though, everyone. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.